Iran is on the boil again. At least 7 people have been reportedly killed as protesters and security forces clashed in several Iranian cities during demonstrations in the Islamic Republic's rural provinces over the ailing economy and rising cost of living. The deaths are believed to have marked the start of a heavy-handed response by Iran's theocracy over the demonstrations against the country's Islamic regime led by the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. In capital Tehran, Iranian authorities have also arrested 30 suspects accused of public order offences as protests against high prices rage across the country. Several videos have emerged from Iran where protesters can be heard shouting slogans like, "Until the mullah is shrouded, this homeland will not be free," and "Mullahs must leave Iran." The latest demonstrations are the biggest in Iran since 2022, when the death of 22-year-old woman Mahsa Amini in police custody triggered nationwide protests. However, the cost of living demonstrations are not yet countrywide and have not been as intense as those surrounding the death of Amini, who was detained over not wearing her hijab or headscarf to the liking of the authorities. The latest protests began on the 27th of December in Tehran, where shopkeepers went on strike over high prices and economic stagnation, and have since spread to the other parts of the country. The casualties, 2 on Wednesday and 5 on Thursday, occurred in 4 cities, largely home to Iran's Lur ethnic group. The most intense violence appeared to strike Azna, a city in Iran's Lorestan province, some 300 kilometers southwest of Tehran. Online videos show objects in the streets set ablaze and gunfire echoing. Officials say some protesters began throwing stones at administrative buildings in Loregan, including the provincial governor's office, the mosque, the Martyrs Foundation, the town hall and banks, and the police responded with tear gas. On Thursday, the state television reported that a member of Iran's security forces was killed overnight during the protests in the western city of Kodasht. Iranian-American journalist and author Mahsa Amini took to X and posted several videos of the protests. The post says, "The youth in Babol burn the Islamic Republic's flag in the streets. Young people set the Islamic Republic's flag on fire in the middle of the street. They chant, 'Until the mullah is shrouded, this homeland will not be free.'" She goes on to write, "Many videos are coming in from Iran showing people chanting in unison in the streets, 'Mullahs must leave Iran,' and 'death to the dictatorship.' This is the voice of a people who do not want the Islamic Republic," she says. Iran's civilian government under President Masoud Pezeshkian has been trying to signal that it wants to negotiate with the protesters. Pezeshkian has sought to calm tensions, acknowledging protesters' legitimate demands. He urged the government to take action to improve the economic situation. In a televised statement, Pezeshkian said, "From an Islamic perspective, if we do not resolve the issue of people's livelihoods, we will all end up in hell." But he acknowledged that there is not much that he can do, as Iran's currency has rapidly depreciated, with $1 now costing about 1.4 million rials.
We are engaged in a full-scale war. Right now, the enemy has placed most of its hopes on knocking us down through economic pressure. You cannot conquer a nation with bombs, fighter jets, or missiles. To defeat us, they would have to come and face us on the ground. And if they were to confront this nation on the ground, if we remain determined, united, and committed to working together to make our country proud, it would be impossible for them to bring Iran to its knees.
The inflation rate in December was 52% year-on-year. Authorities, however, have also promised to take a firm stance and warned against exploiting the situation to sow chaos. Local media coverage of the demonstrations has varied, with some outlets focusing on economic difficulties and others on incidents caused by people they describe as troublemakers. The protests, taking root in economic issues, have heard demonstrators chant against Iran's theocracy. The country's leaders are still reeling after Israel launched a 12-day war against the country in June last year. The US also bombed Iranian nuclear sites during the war. US President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have warned Tehran against reconstituting its nuclear program. Not only that, Trump has issued a dire warning to Iranian authorities over the crackdown on the latest protests. Trump took to Truth Social and wrote, "If Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go."
And speaking of Iran, I hope they're not trying to build up again, because if they are, we're going to have no choice but very quickly to eradicate that buildup. So I hope Iran is not trying to build up, as I've been reading that they're building up weapons and other things. And if they are, they're not using the sites that we obliterated, but they're using possibly different sites. We know exactly where they're going, what they're doing, and I hope they're not doing it, because we don't want to waste the fuel on a B-2. It's a 37-hour trip both ways. I don't want to waste a lot of fuel.
The US State Department said in a post on Wednesday that it was concerned about reports that protesters were facing intimidation, violence, and arrests, and called on the authorities to end the crackdown. First the bazaars, then the students, now the whole country. Iranians are united. Different lives, one demand: respect our voices and our rights, the State Department said. Despite being so far limited, the protests marked the latest chapter in the growing discontent in Iran as the population quietly doing this paragraph again. Despite being so far limited, the protests marked the latest chapter in the growing discontent in Iran as the population quietly reclaims public spaces and personal freedoms through uncoordinated acts of defiance. Many protesters have called for ending the rule of the country's supreme leader. Some have also called for a return to the monarchy.